Good afternoon, everyone. I would like to start by paying my respects to Elders past, to Elders present and to Elders emerging before I start my brief express podium. So as mentioned, my name is Belinda Cox. I am from Brisbane Domestic Violence Service of Micah Projects, and I am in the fortunate position, or unfortunate some would say, to have worked separately both in domestic violence sector and the drug and alcohol sector across a 20 year or so span. So during that time I have observed a number of different issues at play in the intersection between domestic violence and the use of ice and other substances as well. So one of the things that does come up quite frequently, and I talk about this a lot in much of the community education sessions that I do, is that both perpetrators of domestic violence and the broader general public, and I'm going to include the media in this, often use substance misuse and specifically ice as an excuse for violence. Now, whilst we do know that people in psychosis can be quite angry and quite aggressive, there is no research that indicates that substance use causes domestic violence. We know that where there is someone who has a propensity towards using domestic violence in their relationship, that mental health issues or conditions and substance use can certainly exacerbate things. They can make a particular incident more severe, and they do place a higher risk. But there are, in fact, a lot of people who do misuse substances, and a lot of people with mental health conditions who do not perpetrate violence against their partner. So I'd just like to address that from the outset, and particularly when it comes to media, we often see that it is blamed. I don't know if any of you are aware of a tool called the power and control wheel, which is something that's used very widely in the domestic violence sector. And if you do work with people experiencing domestic violence or using domestic violence, I'd recommend it as a really good tool. And that actually addresses some of the minimising, denying and blaming that occurs in a DV situation or relationship where there's domestic violence. So whilst it's important to address people's substance use, we really need to make sure that we're not just giving them an excuse or letting them off the hook for violent behaviour towards their partner. It's a very complex issue, so that's one of the things that I'd like to bring up from the outset. What I've also seen in the past is substance dependency used as a tool to manipulate women either into returning to violence or as a method for preventing them from leaving. So often what is the case is that women are in relationships where there is codependent substance use, and in fact they have been initiated into that drug by their partner. Very soon they do become substance dependent. But what does happen is that they're actually quite isolated from the opportunity to acquire this drug. So they have a substance dependency, and the only way that they can get that substance is through partner. And that's very deliberate. It's a form of isolation. So soon we see that they're either very stuck, or if they do leave, it's very difficult for them to leave and continue their substance use to a level that allows them to go about their daily living, feed the kids, whatever. So I think that that's something that quite often gets overlooked when it comes to domestic violence and substance use, is that it can be the substance use that actually keeps women in relationships as well. Women are often used as a commodity as well for earning money, particularly in certain environments and with populations where there is frequent housing instability or homelessness. Often the earning capacity of a woman who does sex work is quite easy to achieve. And there's a much greater earning capacity than actually going out and getting a normal job. So this is one of the trickle-down impacts that I've also observed during my time working in these areas, is that women are often farmed out to do sex work as a means to acquire drugs. And so if we're having a look at some of the dynamics of domestic violence, what is actually occurring there is both financial and sexual abuse as a result of substance use as well. So, what we do know is through the approaches that we get from women quite frequently is that there aren't enough opportunities for women to either detox or rehab, whether these are inpatient or outpatient opportunities that are suitable for them, particularly if they have their children, and that are safe. Women who use ice or other substances and are wanting to leave violent relationships, unfortunately, are often refused refuge places because of this complexity. So not only is it difficult for them to leave in the first place, but what they're faced with is actually having nowhere to go, and that adds to the complexity. There, I think we would all acknowledge that, there is additional vulnerability for women who have substance misuse issues, particularly if they have a mental health condition as well. And sometimes rehabs and detoxes aren't safe places. Unfortunately, they're often put into environments where there are predatory behaviours from men. They are the kind of women who may tend to have less self-safety mechanisms around unsuitable partners, and that also creates a problem as well. And we see that it's a snowball effect. They're continuously becoming involved in relationships where they are abused. It's already been touched on very briefly, but women and children who face the stigma of drug use and the associated fears in regard to child safety intervention are far more likely to access primary health care, are far more unlikely to access primary health care for DV-related injuries, for fear of their substance use becoming exposed. So we know that people with substance misuse issues will often not seek health care due to the stigma of drug use, but we also see that women who may have some quite severe injuries, and this also means that they're going to inevitably suffer long-term and possibly life-threatening impacts of untreated issues, particularly if there's been strangulation or head injury because of that fear of drug use being exposed, and then the roll-on effect of child safety intervention in their lives. So, inevitably people do come to the attention of child safety, and we know that substance use and domestic violence are primary issues and primary reasons why people do get child safety involved in their lives. But what I would like to put forward as something needing of attention is when there are multiple child protection issues that have brought the family to the attention of child safety. We do sometimes see that when this is the case, occasionally domestic violence actually seems to take a back seat to the substance misuse. So there seems to be a real lack of recognition that for women living in violence, sometimes substance misuse is actually a symptom of the abuse, and that if we focus solely on the substance misuse without addressing the violence that they're experiencing, then that's just a really vicious circle for them that's going to be quite unattainable. We also talk about the fact that domestic violence affects people from all cultures and socio-economic situations. And at BDVS, we support all people experiencing domestic violence. We see lots of people with dual diagnosis issues, so they have mental health issues. They have substance misuse issues, sometimes through, they're self-medicating or such like. And quite frequently we observe that they do have additional vulnerabilities and quite a lot of disconnection or estrangement from family or friends. And this means that they do have that lack of social supports that have been touched on very briefly by Carmel. This again makes it much harder for them to achieve all the things that they need to achieve. So leaving a domestic violence relationship, addressing their substance misuse can be extremely difficult for them when they have no social capital or social standing, and particularly no supports whatsoever. So as Cameron and Carmel have already mentioned, what we really need to do is make sure that our responses link all of the issues that people have together. So we need to make sure that we've got integrated primary health care. We need to have better options for people who are leaving domestic violence. It takes into account that they have children. So residential care where children can go, outpatient counselling options that have childcare facilities. These are really important things. And we need to make sure that we're looking really holistically at all the different things that are affecting individuals, and that specifically is in regard to domestic violence and having a look at women and what they're experiencing in that way, and making sure that we're addressing all of the issues that they have and not just holding them to a standard where they're expected to sort one thing out at the detriment of all the other things that they're trying to handle in their lives. So that's me. Thank you very much. I'll look forward to seeing you all when I'm on a panel later on.